The heroes of the Witcher franchise arrive in Iria, much to their surprise, only to find the monsters and fiends of their home have come with them. Sword of Convallaria meets The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and today we're going to talk about what that means for the game and you, the players. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including ongoing coverage of turn-based strategy RPGs like Sword of Convallaria, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Also, huge shout out to the Sword of Convallaria team at XD Entertainment for sponsoring today's video. You can download SOC now using the code in the description and in the pinned comment, and I encourage you to check it out. Thanks once again to the Sword of Convallaria team. It is always a pleasure to work with them. So what are we talking about today? Well, of course, it's kind of a big deal. It's The Witcher 3 meets Sword of Convallaria, a crossover that I never expected to see and yet am extremely happy to. I'm a big fan of the Witcher series, even though I've only played the third game, but seeing such a big franchise show up in a turn-based strategy RPG that I enjoy so much is extremely exciting for me, and I imagine a lot of you as well. To highlight everything that this update and this crossover has to offer, we're going to go through a brief review of what Sword of Convallaria is, for those of you who maybe are not aware and probably should be, a brief story overview for the Witcher crossover event, highlights of all the newly added characters, additions of new skins for the Collab characters, special collectibles from the Witcher universe that can be earned and added to your player housing in-game, and how these characters and the story are integrated into the overall world of Sword of Convallaria. And that's probably the biggest one for me. Like, the gameplay is really cool, the characters are really interesting, they're very well written, but the difficulty with a crossover of any type is actually making it feel like it fits the universe of the setting that is being crossed over. And I think that's been done very well here, but we'll talk about that at the end. First off, let's talk about what Sword of Convallaria is very quickly. If you're not familiar, Sword of Convallaria is a hybrid single-player campaign meets gacha online, semi-PvP, semi-campaign game in a very familiar turn-based strategy style. As such, it should feel right at home for anyone who is familiar with the genre, and if you haven't checked that out already, I highly encourage you to do so. In particular, the Spiral of Destinies mode is my particular favorite part of the game, as it features a very rich world and a ton of different story paths that you can actually go down based on decisions that you make, missions that you take on, and you can recruit generics, named characters, craft gear, go on these different excursions, and learn a lot about this world. Then you have the whole online side of the game where you can interact with other players, join guilds, go through increasingly difficult story battles against all sorts of creepy, sort of eldritchy, otherworldly foes. It's a ton of fun and is constantly being updated with new content. As far as this crossover event itself is concerned, there's some cool stuff going on here, including a fully animated intro cutscene featuring Geralt and Yennefer with their English VAs, which is extremely enjoyable. I'll have a link to that as well as the full reveal stream for this crossover in the description if you want to check that out.
Told you, don't like this. We should leave.
Answer this time. Do you trust me?
The idea, though, is that Yennefer has summoned a portal that has gone a little awry, and by little I mean literally transported them to an entirely different world and dimension with the land of Iria that our heroes from the Sword of Convallaria are part of. Unfortunately, this doesn't just mean that some of our favorite characters from The Witcher have entered our world, but some of the horrifying monsters from their world, as well as some of the rules of magic, have entered as well, which obviously throws things into major issues when you've got poor random villagers with wooden shields and axes facing off against like Leshens and Drowners and all sorts of horrifying nonsense. Unfortunately for our heroes from the Witcher universe, the magic of Iria, in particular Luxite, has also influenced these monsters, so the normal tactics of our sorcerers and witchers are not really quite as effective as they used to be, so everyone's on the back foot and has to work together to figure out just what the heck is going on, as well as why the party from the Witcher wound up here in the first place. Of course, this does mean that we get to get our hands on and tactically control 4 of the most popular characters from the franchise, and each one of them definitely functions as you would expect them to if you're at all familiar familiar with the Witcher games. Later on in the video, we'll get into full breakdowns of what exactly each character does, but as I mentioned, they play very much like you would expect them to. Geralt has a mix of swords and sorceries, tankier than the other characters, but also has mobility, the use of potions. He's definitely a really good all-rounder. Triss, as you would expect, is a big elementalist mage. She uses a lot of fire, a lot of ice, and has a massive amount of AoE damage she can deal out, while also being able to support the party in a couple of different direct ways. Yennefer, on the flip side, is an even more powerful sorceress, harnessing fire, lightning, and ice, as well as being able to empower herself to dish out massive amounts of damage or cast multiple support spells in a row, but at the cost of then being a little bit weaker on the following turn. So you can get a big go turn, so long as you're able to plan for her being not quite as capable on the follow-up. And finally, of course, Ciri has an even greater mix of magic and swordplay than Geralt does, but without having that same level of tankiness, because she's all about fast movement, teleporting, big AoE damage, and the like. Every character feels very unique and very powerful, and they synergize very well together, as well as with other characters from the world of Sword of Convallaria. Of course, as you would expect from any good game like this in modern day, in 2025, you are able to get a bunch of different skins for these characters, and they are all based on different outfits that they have in the Witcher franchise. Those of you who are familiar with Triss in a certain scandalous emerald green dress, well, don't you worry. That's available here as well. You can also get a bunch of fun collectibles for your in-game housing, such as a Leshen skull or, Geralt in the tub from the beginning of Witcher 3, shields with crests. You can put the characters in your home. You can really Witcherify your whole abode, which is always a fun detail. Really, I'm just so impressed with how much work has gone into actually integrating the world of The Witcher with Sword of Convallaria, to the point that there's actually a whole message from CDPR themselves, the creators of The Witcher games, talking about working with XD and the Sword of Convallaria team to properly integrate these two worlds. And I think that speaks very, very well for the quality of what you can expect here. So to discuss some of that quality, let's talk about the story a little bit, shall we? As mentioned, Yennefer and Geralt are on a little bit of a tryst, a little bit of an outing through the woods, and she summons a portal to go somewhere. Unfortunately, that somewhere was not the land of Iria, and yet that's where they wind up. Shortly thereafter, they come across our team, the Sword of Convallaria themselves, helping a local elder and his villagers defend their village from swarms of frenzied monsters. And while they are mainly just normal wolves at first, they are way nastier and way more aggressive than anyone would expect. Fortunately, of course, Geralt and Yennefer are kind of skilled, just a little bit capable, just slightly. They're not the best or anything. Able to help us very quickly dispatch the monsters, only to find that the Mark of the Leshen is about. And it's probably what was driving these wolves to such heights of aggression. We won't go through the entire storyline here. Of course, gotta let you figure some of these things out for yourself. But it would definitely seem that a certain rogue sorceress has been either intentionally or unintentionally having her Luxite experiments impacting these creatures, including the monsters from the Witcher universe. Clearly, there's more at play here than one would expect, and it kind of mirrors the mashing of worlds together that has created the world of The Witcher being recreated here in Iria. And it's clear that we need to put a stop to it, lest it gets even worse and throws the whole realm into even more chaos than it's already in with all of the warring factions that exist. So that's the general plot behind the story here, but as far as actual mechanical pieces go, how are our four new heroes in the world of Sword of Convallaria? Let's talk about that now. Now, obviously, there's a ton of different ways that you can build these characters. We're going to go through them in order, but I'm going to highlight in particular the ways that I've been choosing to play them in the time that I've had access to an early build of the game. First off, it's got to be the main man himself. It's Geralt. Geralt has two main paths that you can follow, as well as, of course, the ability to mix and match between if you want to go for a little bit of a hybrid build. For Geralt, he has either a major focus on his swordplay or a major focus on empowering his signs, with an overall mechanic of being able to utilize Witcher's potions to empower himself and get big bonuses to his damage. For me, as I've been using all four of the characters from the crossover, I've chosen to make Geralt the tank, as he's absolutely the best one to do so. Referencing his parry mechanics from Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, he is able to negate a lot of damage when being directly targeted, as well as actually being able to jump in the way of allies and take hits for them that they might not otherwise be able to handle. In particular, I've been using a focus on AoE finishers, as well as big casts of Ignis, to be able to deal a lot of damage to enemies very quickly once he gets into position and lures them all into range. Thanks in part to the major AoE capabilities of Yennefer and Triss, who we'll talk about in a second, this tends to set up large sections of the board for mass destruction very quickly, without putting a character character too much at risk, especially since Geralt has the ability to use potions to heal his own HP and using bonus actions to be able to do so, etc. He's not the most mobile character, but fortunately, other characters in the party, again, such as Yennefer and Triss, can solve that for him, and he is able to move around a little bit with some creative usage of his ability to jump in and block attacks for his allies. As far as damage is concerned, he is absolutely no slouch. In particular, the empowered version of his Ignis sign can deal disgusting amounts of damage, although of course you should not disregard the other options either. If you choose to build into them, they can be extremely capable. If you choose to use Geralt on a team of characters from Sword of Convallaria itself, he will absolutely have a role to play as well. It's not very often that you're able to find a character with such a solid mix of both physical and magical attack, giving him a niche that works very well, especially given his options to tank as well. As far as Yennefer is concerned, you do have quite the number of options that you can follow with her, either going fully into major damage, having a major focus on support, or again getting a blend, but either way wanting to utilize her ability to empower herself for big go turns. As far as how I've been using her, I've had a kind of interesting support character with a big go turn nuke option by having her be able to teleport my allies around and double down on putting down clones of herself that deal damage when she drops them, and then also deal giant AoE damage when enemies choose to target and attack them. This has been particularly great in conjunction with Geralt himself, as he's actually able to jump in place of the clones to blank hits and then still have that clone alive to draw more attacks from the enemy. So it's actually allowed me to engage opponents on multiple fronts that I otherwise wouldn't have the sheer party quantity to be able to handle with other types of characters. Once I've soaked a bunch of hits and again gotten a large number of enemies into one group, I can empower Yennefer and have her drop an absolutely massive AoE bomb on everything that's already been softened up by these different clones and just deal a disgusting amount of damage to clear out a large section of the board. And on some harder maps where enemies can be very, very tanky, being able to survive long enough to chip away at them and have a big attack like that actually deal the damage I need to is a huge boon, and I absolutely love the way that Yennefer plays. She is actually kind of my favorite character of the four, just because she has so much that she can do, and that's only with this build. There are so many different options that you have available to you. For example, being able to have all three different elements of spells in her bar, empower them, deal big AoE damage, or do smaller, more tactical hits as well. There's so much that you can do with Yennefer. She's very fun. Moving to Triss, she only has two different elements of spells available to her, fire and ice, but you can really spec into either one of those trees or go the hybrid route to be able to actually get that blending of hot and cold to get bonus effects. As it stands though, because I already had Yennefer doing a bunch of elemental and kind of trickstery stuff and Geralt doing a bunch of tanking, I chose to make Triss a little bit more of a healer for me. She's still able to deal a ton of fire damage because, like, obviously, I mean, look at this, Firestorm is insanely strong, but I did want to have her be able to kind of help Geralt with being an off tank a little bit, being able to give herself or allies shields, as well as being able to do some off healing with pocket potions at the end of her turn. Kind of taking the role of Mytha a little bit if you're familiar with the base cast of Sword of Convallaria. Of course, when it comes down to it, being able to deal a ton of AoE damage is still massively valuable, and particularly in the story events of this crossover where you have a lot of enemies that are vulnerable to fire, being able to deal a lot of fire damage in a large area is extremely strong. Of course, there is something to be said for being able to blend two different elements of magic, or even using purely ice to control the battlefield, slow things down, really cause difficult terrain for enemies. You know, there's definitely some other ice synergies in Sword of Convallaria, my glove. So Triss is certainly a very viable character, but even just having someone who can do damage and off healing at the same time is a worthy addition to any team. Finally, that brings us to Ciri, and while a lot of the characters have had either ways to support their allies or be really tanky while also dealing damage, Ciri is all about being the fragile speedster. That's very true to her character and playstyle in The Witcher 3 as well. For what Ciri likes to do, you can either go all in on the duelist gameplay or lean a lot more into her elven eldritch power with a lot of teleportation, jumping around, getting bonus turns, etc. In fact, being able to take multiple actions in a turn with Ciri makes her potentially the straight up strongest of the bunch, which again, very lore accurate. As far as how I chose to play her, I definitely wanted to go for the maximum AoE route with a little bit of lifesteal as well, because she is kind of fragile, and being able to get her own HP up if the rest of the team is off doing something else and she's kind of being a lone operative was very, very important. So I chose to make the most of her ability to take an action, teleport, and then take another action to clear out whole sides of the battlefield all on her own. This may not be the most optimal way to play her, as I did run into a couple of instances where she actually became very vulnerable very quickly if she wasn't able to clear out priority targets, but as it stood, she was able to move massive distances, deal a good amount of AoE damage, teleport even further into the enemy pack and deal even more AoE damage, and then potentially get herself out without too much damage. It was a very high risk, high reward type of situation, but I found that she lived long enough each time that I could then get someone like Triss over there to give her some healing and let the whole thing start all over again. And the sheer amount of mobility that she brings to the table means that even if you find yourself in a situation where you weren't quite able to clear out all the enemies that you wanted to, she's still able to then warp out of there and either get to safety or continue to be tricksy using like terrain and funneling enemies through choke points and the like. Overall, all 4 of these characters were a ton of fun to use, and while it might sound like they're very overpowered, I very quickly found myself in some of the latter challenge levels of this crossover event to be struggling hardcore even with maxed out characters. You have to be smart, you have to be intelligent, you have to be tactical, and fortunately, the members of the Witcher 3 cast are extremely good at all of those things. Now, of course, like any good event in a game like Sword of Convallaria, you have a plethora of awards and quests and things that you can do to get options for not only the members of your crew that are from The Witcher, but for the rest of your party as well. We're talking upgrade materials, we're talking weapons, we're talking memories to power up other members of the Witcher crew, a lot of different ways to recruit these characters to your party. You have a ton of options available to you. It's a very meaty update overall, and I mean, I guess it makes sense because you have almost 2 months to be able to collect all of the rewards over the course of your gameplay. Some of these quests and missions and objectives and rewards will be released over time, but they should all be out in a fairly quick order to give you plenty of time to get all of the goodies that you are able to. Much like looting a random peasant's shack in The Witcher 3, you will have a lot of fun stuff you can find as long as you decide to put in the effort for it. Overall, I think this is an awesome event. I wasn't sure what to really expect going into it. You know, sometimes these crossover events across the entirety of gaming, whether they be digital games, physical games, tabletop games, etc., can be kind of hit or miss, but this is awesome, man. Again, having full animated cutscenes with English VA for all of these characters who are so memorable and have such a lasting presence in the pop culture of the day, but then seeing them in our favorite grid-paced, turn-based strategy style was so cool, and they're so incredibly well written. I mean, seriously, every time in particular Geralt had a line of dialogue, I could hear his voice in my head reading those lines, and they always fit. The attitude of these characters, especially in contrast to the members of the Sword of Convallaria themselves, felt very striking, and it really seemed like you actually had this blending of worlds where very different types of people and characters had to come together and figure out a problem that was a blend itself of both of their sides of the track. Combine that quality of writing with the overall very interesting kits and very flashy visuals that all the characters bring to the table, and some of the ways that it elevates the characters of the Sword of Convallaria themselves, the interesting and compelling storyline, all the different rewards and very compelling cosmetics and unlockables that you can get. It's just a damn good time overall. If every crossover in every game that I've played could be this good, I'd welcome each and every one of them. More of this, please. I will absolutely return for each and every option like it. And that's our general overview of the Sword of Convallaria meets Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt crossover. As I made clear, I loved being able to play through all this content. I'm absolutely going to come back to it on my main Sword of Convallaria account and unlock all these characters and re-experience the story because it's just that fun, and I highly encourage all of you to do so as well. Again, you can find download links for whatever platform you so choose for Sword of Convallaria in the description down below. And thank you once again to the Sword of Convallaria team at XD Entertainment for sponsoring this video. I very much appreciate it, and I'm extremely excited to see what else you guys do going into the future. With that said, you guys, tell me your thoughts. What do you think of these types of crossovers? Have you been enjoying your time with Sword of Convallaria? Have you maybe taken a break from the game but are going to come back to enjoy this crossover? Because I highly encourage that you do. It's super cool. I'd like to hear all of your thoughts about that down in the comments below. And if you're finding this video a little bit after this event has come out, how was your experience playing it? I'd love to hear that as well. For now, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.